They dismissed him, mocked him, and treated him like a fool. Until he exposed a legal fraud right in front of the judge. The courtroom was already against him before he even spoke. Daniel Carter stepped forward, his suit slightly wrinkled, his tie a little off-center, but his stance was firm. He wasn't a lawyer, never claimed to be. He was just a man who refused to let a corporation steal his mother's home, a company that saw people as nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Judge Henry Lawson peered over his glasses, the corners of his lips twitching in something that wasn't quite a smirk, but not far from it either. He tapped his gavel lightly on the bench. "Mr. Carter, representing yourself." The question was laced with amusement. Daniel met his gaze. "Yes, Your Honor." A chuckle echoed from the opposing side. Richard Caldwell, the corporate attorney, adjusted his cufflinks with an air of casual arrogance. A legal shark with a history of steamrolling small-time defendants, Caldwell was here to do what he did best: win. And Daniel, he wasn't even a challenge. "This won't take long," Caldwell muttered to his assistant, who gave a knowing nod. Daniel heard it. He was meant to. But he remained still. He had been counted out before, dismissed and underestimated. That's why he was here. Judge Lawson sighed, flipping through the case file. "This is a property dispute, correct? A foreclosure challenge?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir. My mother's home." The judge barely looked up. "And you believe you can argue this case against an experienced attorney like Mr. Caldwell?" Daniel didn't blink. "I don't believe, Your Honor." "I know." A few muffled chuckles arose from the corporate side of the room, but something else lingered in the air, an unspoken tension. The kind that comes when someone unexpected refuses to back down. Judge Lawson sighed. "Very well. Let's proceed." But Daniel wasn't just here to argue. He was here to win. Caldwell stood with practiced ease, buttoning his suit jacket as he approached the jury. His voice was smooth, confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is simple." He gestured toward Daniel without even looking at him. "We have a man who refuses to accept reality. The property in question was lawfully acquired through foreclosure. The law is clear. The facts are irrefutable. My client followed the law. Mr. Carter did not." He paused, giving a well-timed shrug. "I understand losing a home is painful, but emotions do not override legal obligations." He returned to his seat, hands folded. The case, in his mind, was already over. Daniel sat still, unaffected. He had expected this. But as he rose from his seat, he caught the way Judge Lawson leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching with mild disinterest. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, his voice steady, "Mr. Caldwell is right about one thing. The law is clear. The question is, does his client actually follow it?" Caldwell's smirk faltered for just a second. "I've spent 6 months analyzing foreclosure cases, loopholes, and corporate tactics designed to strip homes from families. And I found something." Judge Lawson raised an eyebrow. "Something?" Daniel nodded. "Something that changes everything." Caldwell chuckled. "Oh, this should be good." Daniel ignored him. "Before I continue, Your Honor, I'd like to request discovery. Because I have reason to believe the plaintiff is hiding something." The courtroom shifted. Judge Lawson sat forward. "Hiding what, Mr. Carter?" Daniel met his gaze. "Fraud." The air grew thick with silence. Caldwell's smirk disappeared. Judge Lawson, for the first time, looked genuinely interested. Fraud, the judge repeated, his voice sharp. Daniel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I believe the foreclosure on my mother's home was based on forged documents. And I can prove it? Caldwell scoffed. Your Honor, this is absurd. A baseless accusation meant to delay proceedings. Daniel tilted his head. Is it then? Tell me, Mr. Caldwell, how common is it for a bank to foreclose on a house when the original mortgage documents contain two different signatures from the same person? The courtroom murmured. What are you talking about? Caldwell snapped. Daniel pulled 2 copies of the original mortgage agreement from his folder. He handed them to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. These are 2 separate copies of the same document, Your Honor, one from the initial filing, and one from a later modification. The signatures don't match. Judge Lawson examined the papers, his forehead creasing. Mr. Caldwell, do you have an explanation? Caldwell cleared his throat. Your Honor, signatures can change over time. Maybe, Daniel interrupted. But the second signature was dated the day after my mother suffered a stroke. The murmurs grew louder. Judge Lawson's tone hardened. Mr. Caldwell, does your client have the original, signed documents? Caldwell hesitated just for a second. But Daniel saw it. So did the judge. We would need time to retrieve them. Daniel smiled. I'll wait. But he wasn't done yet. Your Honor, the mortgage was sold 3 times before landing with the current lender. He handed another document to the judge. Each transfer should have been accompanied by an official endorsement. But if you look closely. Judge Lawson frowned. There's no signature on the last transfer. Exactly, Daniel said. Which means the lender had no legal right to foreclose. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, this is... Judge Lawson cut him off. This is a problem. Daniel wasn't finished. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness. The back doors opened, and a woman entered. Sarah Jennings, a notary public, looked nervous as she took the stand. Ms. Jennings, Daniel said, did you witness my mother signing the second mortgage document? Sarah hesitated, glancing at Caldwell. Then, finally, no. A gasp rippled through the room. Daniel pressed on. Then how was it notarized? Sarah swallowed hard. A bank representative gave me the document. Told me it was already signed. Another shockwave hit the courtroom. Caldwell shot up. Objection. Overruled, Judge Lawson said, his voice tight. He turned to Caldwell. This case isn't looking as simple as you suggested. Minutes later, the gavel came down. The court rules in favor of the defendant. The foreclosure is void. Daniel exhaled, the weight of months of battle lifting off his shoulders. Outside the courthouse, Judge Lawson approached him. You ever think about law school? Daniel chuckled. Not really. The judge smirked. You should reconsider. You've got a knack for making lawyers sweat. As the judge walked away, Daniel looked back at the courthouse. They had underestimated him. But never again.